Imagine finding your dream home. A beautiful old house, standing proudly on a quiet street, filled with character and charm. For one family, this dream became a reality. They moved in, their hearts full of joy and plans for the future. The first few weeks were a honeymoon period, filled with unpacking boxes and the smell of fresh paint. They loved the old wooden floors, the high ceilings, the way sunlight streamed through the large, ornate windows. It was perfect. Until one evening, as the house settled into the quiet of the night, a sound broke the silence. Faint, almost imperceptible. A soft, muffled gasp, seemingly coming from within the walls themselves. They dismissed it. Old houses make noises, right? The settling of wood, the wind in the eaves. But then it happened again. A whisper, too indistinct to make out the words, but undeniably human. The dream was beginning to show cracks. The initial unease soon blossomed into a quiet, creeping dread. The sounds grew more frequent, more distinct. It wasn't random creaks and groans anymore. It was a pattern, a repetition. Every night, at precisely the same time, the sequence would begin. First, the soft gasp. Then, a muffled struggle, the sound of fabric tearing, a thud against the wall. And then the voice. A single panicked word echoing from the past. A ghost, not of a person, but of a sound, a memory, trapped in the very plaster and wood of the house. This wasn't an intelligent haunting, an entity trying to communicate. This was a residual echo, an auditory scar left by a moment of extreme trauma, replaying itself over and over like a scratched record. The family became unwilling witnesses to a history they didn't understand, trapped in a loop of someone else's final moments. The house wasn't just making noises. It was replaying a memory, a terrifying sonic ghost story. The family began to feel like prisoners in their own home, haunted by an invisible auditory terror. The repetition was maddening. Every night, they would brace themselves, waiting for the inevitable performance to begin. They tried everything: soundproofing, white noise machines, even bringing in paranormal investigators. But nothing could silence the echo. It was part of the house's very fabric. The investigators confirmed their worst fears. This was a classic case of residual haunting, a psychic impression left on the environment by a traumatic event. The house was essentially a recording device, and it was stuck on a loop, playing back the worst moment of someone's life. The family realized they weren't being haunted by a spirit, but by the raw, unadulterated energy of a past tragedy. The sounds were a forensic audio file, a clue to a story that the house was desperate to tell, whether anyone wanted to listen or not. Driven by a mix of fear and a desperate need for answers, the current owners turned from paranormal experts to historical archives. They began digging into the history of their dream home, poring over old newspapers, public records, and police files. Their search led them down a dark and chilling path. Decades earlier, their beautiful house had been the scene of a violent, unsolved crime. A young woman had been attacked within those very walls. The details were sparse, the case long gone cold. But as they read the clinical, detached language of the police report, the pieces began to fall into place with horrifying clarity. The sounds they were hearing each night were not random. They were the auditory remnants of that crime. The muffled struggle, the frantic gasp, the single, desperate word cried out in terror. The house wasn't just haunted, it was preserving evidence. The haunting was a cold case file, an audio recording of a crime scene trapped in time. The discovery changed everything. The family could no longer see their home as a place of comfort and safety. Every corner, every wall, seemed to scream with the memory of that long-ago violence. The once charming features now felt like tombstones, markers of a tragedy that had been absorbed into the very structure. They were living inside a memorial to an unsolved crime, forced to bear witness to its final, terrible moments, night after night. The knowledge didn't bring peace. It brought a heavier, more profound kind of horror. They weren't just hearing a ghost, they were hearing a victim's last moments. The clinical details from the police report now had a voice, an echo that refused to fade. The house had become a living monument to a forgotten trauma, and they were its unwilling curators. The question then becomes, can a place that has absorbed so much suffering ever truly be cleansed? Can you paint over a memory? Can you renovate away a psychic scar? Or does the environment itself hold on to that trauma? The energy of a violent act forever imprinted upon the plaster, the wood, the very air? For some houses, the past is not just a story, it's an active presence. The trauma becomes part of the building's identity, waiting for the right conditions, the right occupants, to replay its tragic song. It suggests that some wounds are too deep to heal, and some locations are forever stained by the events they have witnessed. The memory of suffering lingers, a permanent echo that no amount of time or new paint can erase. The house itself becomes the final witness, a silent keeper of a dark secret, destined to repeat its story to anyone who will listen. The family eventually moved out. They couldn't live with the constant reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded within their walls. The house is empty now, standing silent on its quiet street, waiting.